Hey guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. Today we're taking a look at a knife that I was pretty excited when I heard about it almost 2 years ago or more. Ended up getting a different thresher, the Master Drop thresher in the meantime before this came out. Finally, BRS delivered on this, and they have done a really nice job. So this was definitely worth the wait. And if you're looking for a production Gavco, I would be inclined to go with this one over the Master Drop, but that's just me. They're both, by the way, very well done. I don't have any complaints about the Master Drop at all. I just like this one a little better. The size suits me a little more, and I think gives it a little better ergonomics. And this blade, look at it. It just needs to be 4 inches long. Okay, so a number of reasons that I was pretty excited about this. First of all, I'm a fan of Michael Gavik. I've been following him since he was a YouTuber. I remember watching his Browse Silent Soldier review and his 0200 review. They're probably still out there on YouTube somewhere. I will admit this. I don't love a lot of his current designs. He tends to go on a little too over the top for me and get outside of what I consider practical. But two, he uses a lot of chisel grinds, and I just hate chisel grinds. Anyway, something about my OCD it messes up. It's not balanced, and it needs to be balanced. So. Also, cutting with them is a pain in the neck. They always they fight against you. It's like driving a car that needs an alignment. So. Back to this knife. This is not a chisel grind. It is one of the more normal looking Gavco designs, although it's quite a flourishy blade, very aggressive looking. It's a very stylized knife, but it's stylized, I think, in a way that's balanced and makes a lot of sense and can still be, useful and has sort of an attractive look to the eye. So. Those were all the reasons. And then, of course, so I liked the Thresher before when it was a Gavco custom. And then when I heard BRS was doing their Evolve line and that this would be part of it, I was excited about that. And so I've been watching for some time. And then I became even more excited when they finally hit the market and they were $189. I always get nervous with, popular collaborations. I always get a little bit nervous because they can become very expensive very quickly. And I think of all the custom knife factory collabs right now, and I don't know what justifies the insane prices that they're asking, like $600-700 as the start price. Doesn't make sense to me. Anyway, let's get back to this particular knife. So I was a little nervous that when this was going to be produced, it would be stupidly expensive and hard to get. But these things are $189, which is really a high value. Anyway, a very high value price, competitive with anything else that's being made out there. Some of the very low cost brands that are even trying to break into the market with low prices, this competes with them even and is definitely on a different level. So very cool. We have an established brand in BRS. We have an established maker in Michael Gavco, and anyway, lots of good stuff about this knife before I ever even got it in hand. And then when it came and I got it, and now I've had the chance to spend some time with it, I really like it. I feel like especially after having the Master Drop, which I liked, but always felt like was just a little too small and cramped my hand a little bit. I feel like this design finally comes into its own in a full-size knife. Okay, so now that we've gotten all that out of the way, and I mentioned full size, let me give you the actual size. 8 7/8 overall, 3 7/8 on the blade, 5 inches on the handle, 4 1/4 inch grip area. So, it's rare that in a folder, okay, we get more than 4 inches of grip area. So this has tons and tons of real estate. Now it does weigh in at 5.9 ounces, but that's not, to me, a big deal. I know to some of you won't like that. There is no internal milling. Normally we'd cover this. Hold on, see if I can get the sun to shine in there the right way. There we go. So no internal milling whatsoever. They could have lightened it up a little bit by doing that, but that likely would have increased the cost. And sorry about that, my hand keeps messing with the lighting. Whenever I go in, the camera automatically changes all its settings. But that's the size on this knife, and I do think it's a great size. And in terms of carry, it carries quite well. The one complaint I will give you right at this point is this clip is quite tight, and the way it lands almost on the relief cut can be difficult to get into, especially thicker pants. Now I'm wearing like a normal pair of shorts today, and it goes in and out of this pocket no problem. Or if you're wearing, even jeans are fine. But like 511s or something with a really thick, hefty pocket, you'll have a little bit of a struggle. It's not bad, but there's a little bit of a struggle getting this into something like a pair of 511s. Otherwise, you're not going to have too many issues. I guess I could flip this over and let you guys take a look at the frame side while the lock side, while we're talking here. So that's size, weight, and carry. Again, for me, this is absolutely fine. And honestly, 6 ounces for a 9-inch knife, to me, that's not a big deal. I know some of you will have rules like it must be, under 4 ounces or something. That's great. Then stick with your rules. Blade is S35VN, clip point, black wash blade with a saber grind that's fairly moderate. I wouldn't call this a high flat grind, sort of a medium flat grind. Fairly thick blade stock, comes down to a very fine point here. It's not focusing, come on. There we go. Comes down to a very fine point here. Now you can actually see it, and you can see this nice swedge. Now the one thing that bothers me about this blade is it's a really, really interesting grind. It's cool, it's got a lot of stuff going on. The blade itself is a real piece of artwork, and Michael Gavko has done a great job with this, but I feel like it loses a little something with the black wash. I can think of if this was satin with multi-directional grind lines, it would just look fantastic. And so I do feel like they kind of missed an opportunity for making something that looked really, really cool. Now I get going with all black matches the sort of shark theme, and it's a thresher, and you've got the eye here and all of that. I get it, but I still would have liked to see satin grind on this, because I just love the grind line, the blade so much. And I feel like, the various facets here would have looked fantastic. Now, in terms of, performance, whether it's a black wash or a stone wash or satin or hand rubbed satin, or those finishes are really pretty much just aesthetic. They can have an impact on, of course, how the steel corrodes, but S35VN is going to be fine in any one of those finishes anyway. Lots and lots of belly here. So this is basically all belly. All right. And in use, that's actually pretty handy. And I've used this quite a bit. And I've got to say this, while the blade is a little thick, okay, especially with that fairly low grind, I would have liked to see this bumped up. If you moved this line up to like here and just thinned everything out a little bit, I think the performance would have been bumped up a little. I will say in use, it's actually quite nice. All right, I don't really have big complaints. Again, I feel like a broken record saying this. If you're cutting apples or potatoes or some fibrous vegetable like that, yeah, it's gonna split things rather than slice them. But I rarely have to do that kind of thing with my EDC. So as long as it's thin enough behind the edge, and this one is, that it gets that initial start of a cut pretty well. If you're cutting cardboard or rubber, you're just cutting strings or packages or carving wood, all of those things, this is absolutely fine and has performed for me quite admirably. Sorry about the lighting. The sun's just moved around on me. I'm going to see if I can fix that or not. Maybe that'll help a little. Okay. The other thing I want to mention before we leave off of the blade here is the way they've done this choil. I know it's kind of an ergonomic point, but I have to say I really, really I feel like it's just the right size, and that bit of a sway in the back of the blade there. This is really, really nice. And if you're doing, this kind of work, anything down here, I really like to choke up on this and use it in that fashion. So overall, I think this blade is quite a win. I like the material. I like the grind. I really like the design, the aesthetics of this blade. I think it's absolutely a beautiful blade. And so, while it's a little bit thick and you know, I could see slightly better performance if it was thinner. That's about the only complaint that I can offer here. By the way, I'm going to have a ton of comparisons, so stick around for that portion if you want to see a whole lot of knives, because there's a lot of titanium frame locks out there, and many would be competitive with this. I've got a few that aren't that competitive as well. Okay, let's talk about lockup and deployment. Another welcome change here. So as you notice, you know, these days when it comes to titanium frame locks, it's almost obligatory that they have a flipper, and this does not. And I'm really happy that it doesn't. The detent is very nicely dialed in, so, you know, you can get a good stiff flick there. If you if you're like me, and especially in the early days, you like to really play with your knife a lot, this is a little stiff. I actually started to get some soreness in, you know, the muscles in the back of my thumb here from flicking a knife so much. I'm sure all of you knife guys have experienced that kind of thing before. But well, that's the case. It's very, very enjoyable. The only little hiccup you can see happening right here. Okay, I'm hitting the detent ball right there. If I push, I can push it past that. Or if I think about it, now it doesn't happen. But the odd time, about one in every 5 or so openings, I get it caught sort of on the detent ball there, and that's a little bit annoying. Lock bar is very nice, very accessible. That's something I always look for and always comment on. It does have an over travel stop and a lock bar insert. It is on bearings. All right. So, you know, what do I think of this action? Yeah, I like this action quite a lot. I enjoy the smoothness of it, the speed of it, the stiffness on the detent. You know, all of that stuff is very, very nice. And so, yeah, I think lockup deployment action overall is quite good. Everything's accessible. The ergonomics are good. The lock bar, or I mean, not the lock bar. I wanted to say the thumb stud I find really, really good. There are a lot of only mediocre thumb studs out there. This one is very, very nice. Okay, so now that we've talked about action, lockup deployment, all that good stuff, let's move on to the handle itself. Now, the handle is a little bit strange because when you look at the overall knife, I think it balances out quite well. And if you went too far with doing stuff here, it would get overbearing. The way this is done, where it's actually pretty plain, you just get that bit of a pop of color with the backspacer, which I love, by the way, and a little bit of contrast with the hardware, which is a little darker black, and the clip, which is darker black. All right. I think aesthetically, it's actually pretty well balanced out. If you went too far doing a lot of stuff with this, it could affect the overall look of the knife. Again, could this work in, you know, plain tie and satin? I absolutely think it could. It could have even worked in black wash and satin. There are a lot of options here. That's the one thing I would say about this from a design. From a design standpoint, they came out with either this option or like a gold handle with a stone-washed blade, and I actually found that one to be pretty ugly. I did not like the look of that at all. I would have liked to see some other options available in terms of colors here. As it stands, right, I always, if I'm able to, I'm going to go with a satin option. Satin with this black wash I think would have looked good. Plain tie with sort of a bead blast would have looked good. There were lots of options available that they could have done, and perhaps in future that will happen. There'll be other variants of this that you can pick up. As it stands right now, you're limited to 2 different color options, and you know, this one I think is by far the better one, and it's not quite ideal, mostly because, you know, you've heard me harp on the satin blade thing a number of times now, but I think that would have made the knife a little more balanced. Anyway, that's my aesthetic points. What about ergonomics? And by the way, construction is very good. It's smooth. The fit and finish is excellent. Moving over to ergonomics, I do think this is really, really nice. So there's lots of real estate here, nice deep choil at the front, no hot spots, whether I'm holding it in left or right hand, reverse grip, you know, you got a nice spot for your thumb to rest up there. You know, again, I don't know who holds a knife like this or for what reason, but it never happens to me. I just do it on these videos. So yeah, ergonomics is great, and I do love the way they've done this choil with the little thumb rest here. Again, huge win. I really find that particular option to choke up a little bit. Very, very nice on this knife because it is a larger knife. And having that ability to sort of shrink the knife for practicality sometimes is definitely worthwhile. So ergonomics, absolute win. I have no issue with that. It's very comfortable in hand. The construction is nice, and the design is overall very attractive. I do like it, even though I know I've complained about it a little bit in this video. I find this to be a very attractive knife as well. I just feel like it could have been even that much more attractive. All right, let's go ahead and get into some comparisons before I give you my overall thoughts. Okay guys, so I do have quite a number of comparisons. Let me begin with the standard ones just that are more aimed at giving you an idea of the size here. So there's a pair of two, not a super comparable knife, but one everyone's kind of familiar with. What else have we got here? Rat Model 1, again, a knife that many of you will be familiar with. If you don't know either of those, this is, by the way, the Model 1, not the 2, so keep in mind the size. There is the Manix 2 lockback. So hopefully that gives you a good idea of size. I do have some other knives that are more comparable in terms of either form factor. So let's do this one first. I find this one interesting because, you know, the size is similar and they have a sort of a similar feel to them, if you will. I kind of like the way the blade extends out past the handle a little further than it does on the Crooked River, but both of these, you know, big 9-inch knives, sort of similar bent to them as they come together. Overall, I could see these being somewhat competitive, and in fact, very similar in price point as well. What else have I got? So here's a knife that really reminds me of this. Similar size, definitely, you know, both kind of slim, long blades. The WE 037 is much, much lighter. Feels maybe a little bit better in hand, and of course the blade is going to be a bit thinner, and it's going to be M390 as well. You are going to pay a little more for the 037 there from WE. Oh, you know what? I should have brought this one in first when we were doing more size comparisons. When it comes to titanium frame locks, you know, you're hard pressed to talk about a titanium frame lock without at least bringing in an Inkosi for comparison. So there is the Chris Reeve Knives Inkosi. Of course, that's the Tanto. What else have we got here? So another knife many of you are familiar with, and certainly it's going to cost a little bit more, okay, but here's the 0562 from Zero Tolerance, and again, that's a knife that a lot of people like and a lot of people are familiar with, so should give you a good idea there. What else have we got? Here's a Kaiser, the Kaiser Odin, and you know, again, long, slim knife, kind of has a similar look and feel to it. If you want to step up just a little bit, again, I talked about how good the action was on this and how enjoyable, but it's not going to compare to the Torrent. Again, if you want something, you know, if you're, you know, this is 189, you can buy these used for about 240, 250. So you might want to step up and get something a little bit nicer and more refined. Another more refined knife would be the WE Knives Malice. So that gives you, I think, lots and lots of comparisons to consider, some at a similar price point, most at a similar size, all, of course, titanium frame locks, or most titanium frame locks outside of the Spydercos and the Rat 1 that I brought in at the beginning. Hopefully that can kind of help you get an idea of what the competitive options are that are out there and what you might want to look at if you're kind of looking at this along with some other stuff. I will say I think this actually stacks up very well against a lot of those knives. It's cheaper than most of the knives I showed you. It's pretty well just as well built, and of course the cool thing here is you're getting that very, very awesome Gavco design, which really is an impressive design. I've got to say Michael deserves a lot of credit because this is a very cool looking knife, and I don't think it's an accident that this is the model of his that gets the production collaborations. It's definitely, I think, one of the more broadly appealing of his designs. Sorry about that, guys. The sun moved again. I don't know if I can actually deal with it or not, but I can try. Nope, I can't. The lighting isn't going to cooperate, so that's fine. We're just going to leave it as it is. But yeah, I think other than a couple little hiccups, and very minor. I wish there were different color options available. I wish the blade was just a hair thinner, although it's actually quite effective as an EDC blade. So other than those very small complaints, I think this is a great knife, and it comes in at a very attractive price point, so it's pretty easy to recommend this one. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to use the links down below. That does help the channel, and we will talk to you soon.